Get fast, reliable speeds at home and on the go with internet and mobile from Xfinity. Switch to Xfinity Internet with unlimited data included, so you can do more of what you love online. They have deals with a 2-year rate guarantee and no annual contract required, so it's risk-free. Plus, when you add Xfinity Mobile, you'll get connected to the fastest mobile service, and you'll get major savings. Go to Xfinity.com/faster, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store to learn more. Restrictions apply. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet.
Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. Heather, how are you today?
I am doing fabulous, Julie. How are you?
Oh, I'm making it. No reason to complain because you know what? It's not going to help anyway.
That's the truth. That is the truth. So that's the way to look at it, right?
Oh, yeah. Got to keep it moving.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes. I have a friend that says every day can be a good day. You just have to make it that way.
It's true. It is. Because there's always something good. And, it could always be worse. So let's be clear, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to make it a good day. Heather, it's almost about that time, or you can say it really is about that time for people to make their resolutions, right? Tell me this, you're a resolution person?
So I used to be, all right? I used to definitely get into it. And with the family, we'd be like, let's have resolutions. And then there came a time where it was rephrased to me. And, who knows? I'm always throwing out my quotes from all these seminars and books I read. But I really then, I decided, resolutions are like you're waiting to break them, and it's just funny, like a punchline. And instead of that, maybe we should have goals. And then, like, I've even built on that since then in a way to really make sure the things I want to happen.
All righty. So tell me this, do people make a resolution to get divorced?
I do think they do. And I think whether they don't write it out, as one of their resolutions, but because, when you say that, like you've resolved to do it. And so it is kind of silly the way I think we all, I'm going to do this New Year's resolution, but yet you haven't resolved to do it because you're not committed and you don't go through with it. But I do believe people, as we end the year and there's a new beginning, the start of the new year, all of the holiday stuff that we've talked about, the good, the bad stress, the family time off work, all that, too much togetherness. I think people are like, I am done. Like this new year is going to be a new beginning. And because that changing of that year, it affects us all, right? It all does. And it has our entire lives. The world keeps revolving on. I think people are able to see that as a time to start. And I think that's why probably we all have these resolutions, or we want this new year to be better.
Now, something you said earlier about the way you approach this, you said that you've reframed it, right? So we think about resolutions and goals. What's the difference? And is one more successful, you think?
I think that resolutions sometimes are a little bit too vague, and they are coming from a part of you that wants something new, but doesn't. I mean, I think the studies say 80% of New Year's resolutions fail within the first month. And that's because probably they really aren't written as a specific measurable goal. And I think that's pretty much how why we think of them maybe as not to be really that clear. Because yeah, if you're like, I'm gonna start working out this year, because we know everybody says that. Why? I don't know, but probably because they ate a lot and they spent a lot of time and drank a lot all over the holidays, and then their pants don't fit. So it's like, I'm going to join the gym, because we know that's like when all the gyms, personal trainers, everybody. But it's not really thought out as much like, okay, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 30 days, and this is how I'm going to do it, which is more like a goal. Like if we really think about, hey, my goal this year is to do XYZ. And, I do that with the business. And then I think of, well, what do I want to do personally? Okay. Because I think, and now this has been said by a lot of people. I know Tony Robbins said it, but we overestimate what we can get done in 1 year, but like underestimate really what we can achieve in like 5 years. So like really thinking it out, which is hard. I'll speak for myself, but I think as Americans, we are a add to cart, deliver now, kind of people, and we want it now versus, hey, I'm going to have to do this for however many weeks, however many months to achieve this clear goal of what I want to. And I think that when we can look at it in a different way, that it's not a resolution, because although a resolution sounds concrete, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
And it sounds like, hey, I've resolved to stop smoking. Okay. And some people do and not, but like there's something about, why January 1st? I don't know. I fall into the same thing too. Who wants to start something in the middle of the month? Nobody does. No. It's going to start on the 1st. So did that make it easier to achieve? I don't know. But like I can find a lot of reasons not to start, today on the 29th of the month or the 23rd of the month than, the 1st. So I mean, it's interesting to look like what, where it all came from and all of that. But I just think that when we, if we were to really look at, if we want to achieve something like a divorce or like having your freedom, I think it starts with like, I'm not going to live like this anymore. Right. And we've all had that. We've all been in a situation where I am done doing it this way. Right. You're nodding your head. You're like, amen. Yes, that is true.
Yeah. And you know what? That's interesting that you put it that way, because instead of possibly saying that my goal is divorce, you say my goal is freedom. My goal is a different way to do things. That is not the way I'm doing them now.
Right. And, and part of that, as we've discussed many times, is because the pain, we all know, okay, hey, we all want goals that the pleasure of it, right? But like we're comfortable. But as soon as we become uncomfortable, when the pain is higher than the pleasure, that's when 90% of people take action. Because it takes that breaking point that they are at the point where I am not living like this anymore. Whether that is in a marriage very often or in any relationship. And that can be with any type of relationship or a job or a situation. You're like, this is no longer serving me. And that sounds selfish, I think, on its surface, but it's really not, because when you're in a relationship, in a workplace, in anywhere that's not serving you, you're not bringing your best self. And, we've all, are here on this earth for something. It's hard to maybe all figure it out, but like, we know when we're in our best self, the people you're around, like, man, they bring out the best in me. And, hopefully you do the same for them. But usually those kind of relationships feed on each other. And I think the negative ones, they serve you until they don't. And then that's when I think we say, I'm making a resolution. I am not doing this anymore. And that's what I think why we see a lot of that in the beginning of the year.
And when we think about resolutions versus goals, so it sounds like a goal is probably more successful than a resolution. I've always heard that goals are smart. I'm sure you've heard this as well. Smart goals, they're what? Measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. There's specific. I left off the S. I only said MART. So SMART,
Yes.
specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So that's what makes them successful.
Right. And I think that's where, if we say it's a resolution, but if we turn it into a goal, it's got to be measurable. And yes, it has to be specific, because if you want to lose weight, well, probably lose a pound easily, but like how much? So that's not specific enough. In our brains, in our subconscious, like we need that specificity, because I think it helps you stay inspired versus motivated, because the motivation, it can only last so long when things are uncomfortable. And so if specific, like, there's so many of the common New Year's resolutions that are related to weight and health. There are so many resolutions related to health and wellness. And you want to exercise more, so you join a gym. And so like that's the action, but I just don't think that is specific enough as to the best example for me, because this helped me when anytime I'm not a runner, I'm a jogger. Like, let's be clear, I'm not fast despite my last name, like nothing, not even marrying into it. My poor kids too. It's like got dense bones, we don't float well, and we don't run fast. So that's just the way it is. But whenever I did even a 5K, I love within that running, jogging world, that you get a calendar, like it maps it out every single day. Today's a mile, and I did train for a marathon many years ago. I mean, it's just, there's something, your rest day, your long run day, you do. And so that was really specific. So I didn't have to think about, am I going to go on the treadmill today or the bicycle? Am I going to play tennis? Like, I knew I had to run a certain amount. So that was really specific. And it was also, just like you were talking about, measurable. Okay, I either do it or you don't, right? You either ran or you don't. And then it was achievable because it started with, I think, even walking and running, so it starts with the beginner. You got to start where you are. It's really hard to say, like, I am, I would say it is achievable. That's more on the mindset, but there are ways, like, I mean, if I've never really been a runner or jogger, I'm going to go run 5 miles. Maybe, it depends how well you're going to do. That might be harder versus build up to it. Then you build confidence and you build that endurance, and, that smart part, the relevant, like it relates to what your desire is to run this thing, and it has a time frame. And I think that's where we get lost in a resolution, not for lack of a great idea and a goal and something we want to achieve, but it's getting a little deeper into it, because just getting into shape without a plan is, you can't measure if you're doing it or not. Like, what is it? Do you want to lose inches? Do you want to lose pounds? Do you want to be able to lift weights? All those things.
So, it sounds like to me, you start off possibly with a resolution, nothing wrong with that. And then you think about, what you want to happen, your desired outcome, and then you come up with a goal.
Exactly. And then, we have this beautiful thing called Google and the internet, and I don't care what goal it is. I should just Google. Well, I'll create the one like, how, goals to achieve a divorce or whatever. But, there's so much there. We have so many resources available to us that you can then search for, hey, this plan looks like this will fit for me. Let me try to implement it, rather than creating stuff from scratch. Like, that's the great thing, is there's a lot of resources out there in general.
Yeah, you give yourself somewhere to start where you are, first of all, because if you don't, then that's discouraging, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you don't want to be discouraged at all. And then, ask for help. And that help is going onto Google and finding that solution, that resolution that you have. And I'm sure somebody else has it as well.
Exactly. And, sometimes, well, I find, if I can find a starting point, and maybe I look at, here's the template, here's a plan. Okay, well, now I at least have something to work with. So I don't have to recreate all this stuff because I really don't know what I'm doing if I'm trying to achieve a goal, maybe that I've never achieved before too. That's also an obstacle that just recognize. You don't know if you can do it or not because you've never done it. So if there's maybe a plan that looks realistic for you, or you modify it, but at least you have some type of resource.
You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. When we return, we're going to talk about how to set goals and achieve them. We already talked about it a little bit, but we're going to dig even deeper. Resolutions versus goals. Stay with us. Welcome back to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. Today, we're talking about resolutions versus goals. Which one do you try to achieve? I'm going to tell you, I'm not a resolution person at all. But let's talk about goals. How do we set goals and achieve them? We talked about them being smart, right, Heather?
Yes. And the way I like to think about it is you first start with your idea. What is it I want? What do I really want? Because that's where you got to start, and then sometimes work backwards, right? Because that end goal, you kind of know what happens in the end, but it might be harder to be, how am I going to get there? So then work backwards, because you may underestimate how long it's going to take. So and then you're setting yourself up for disappointment, right? If you think something is achievable in 30 days, and really 90 days makes way more sense based on the things you want to achieve. So I think that is a great way. And, you can interchange a goal with the word outcome, because what is your outcome? That's what we do with all our clients. At the very beginning, we come up with a case plan, and we start with what the end result. And then we kind of work back. We definitely work backwards. Like, okay, this is all the things that have to happen in order to get to that end result. And that is sometimes a way to maybe break it down into smaller pieces that are more manageable and measurable.
All right. So if you have some type of aversion to the word goal, think outcome. I didn't think about
exactly. It's just it's something you can measure and what you're wanting to achieve at the end is, an outcome.
And we have to think small, right? Don't think something big. I want to lose 50 pounds and I'm going to do it all at one time. We have to think about it in small pieces.
Well, this is what I would say. Think big, and then let's work backwards. Okay, so if it's 50 pounds, then, okay, you know what? If you say, I want to lose 50 pounds, we'll just say by June 1st, so that I can go on that summer trip and feel good and have energy. Okay, well, then you have to measure your weight now, and then at the end, and then maybe work backwards, because, then you just play with the numbers. Like, well, how much do I have to lose every week? And then you may want to break that down to day or half week, because then you break it all down. So you can have the big one, but then as you break it all down, you may find that, okay, I can do this. This is aggressive, but let's get started. And at least then you have something you believe you can do with the work. Because too many people say, I want to lose, and I don't know if it's really as much weight, or, oh, I'd love to run a marathon. Oh, I want to be a millionaire. I want to do this. Well, what does that even mean until you break it down? Because it's really not that unattainable. Hey, if you want to run a marathon at a 5-minute mile pace, okay, you're going to really probably need some professional training, is all I can say, because that's a lot of work. However, just to run one, people do it all the time, so I think, but it's just then work backwards from the date. And even if it is really an aggressive timeline, an aggressive goal, sometimes, there are those of us that need that push, Julie. Like, it's just too boring if it's not big enough to really have to push myself to it. And I bet there's a lot of listeners out there. It's like, yeah, if it's not exciting enough for me to work for, it's not, not going to keep me on pace and keep me inspired or motivated.
But if someone is the opposite, they may say that they need those smaller goals just so they know that it's something that they can achieve. And once they get there, they're like, "Ooh, I did it. Let's do it again."
I agree. I think that no matter how big it is, you do have to break it down on a daily, weekly basis to get that positive reinforcement that I did what I was supposed to do today. Okay, keep going. Like I think no matter how big it is, you got to get it down to the, what do I have to do every day to achieve what I want to achieve in 6 months or in 30 days? If I'm pushing myself, well, you got to break it down by day to know what you have to do. And then if you really need that push, but at least you know what it requires on a daily basis.
Do you believe it helps to write it down?
Yes. If you don't write it down, it didn't happen, right? Like that's the way it works with most records and record keeping, but you have to see it. And then that also increases the connection. So, okay, you think it, we think, and we can dream. Well, but if you want that dream to become a reality, you need to have a plan, and then you need to write that down, and that connection between what you thought and then what your hand writes and what your eyes see, like all that physicality in there, it truly is physiologically and mentally a process that helps you better achieve it. That's why, like, I write down a lot when I'm listening, when I'm doing things, and then I tend to really remember it so much better. Not as much typing because that's not my handwriting. I don't have as much of a connection, but there is something to writing it down. And even if it's sticky notes on your fridge, on your computer, but something that you see that and it triggers, like, I wrote that down. That is what I want. I need to remind myself. I want that. Even when I'm, want a snack or I want ice cream. No, this is what I want. I want this more than that. So I think when you see that, it absolutely is what will help keep you going and keeps you on track. Because if you haven't written it down, how are you measuring anything, right?
And after I've written it down, I mean, I think about it, don't put it possibly in a notebook only and then just put the notebook in a drawer and don't look at it again. Yes,
right. It has to be in your awareness, right? Where you see it. And that's why I think, like we say, the mirror and even, there was a time and there was a quote or something that I just wanted to keep fresh in my mind. And I think a friend wrote it down for me and I took a picture of it and put it as the screensaver on my phone. So then I could read it. So you can use technology to help and, apps for tracking all kind of things, but it can be as simple as a Post-it note strategically placed around the house, right?
Yeah, I think about that. I have a Post-it note on my mirror that says, "You are enough," So, things like that. I just think you got to keep something in front of you.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yes, yeah. I think that it helps remind you, oh, that's right. That is me that wants this, right? That is me that said, I want to do this. So I want to keep this promise to myself.
But sometimes we can take on too much, right? It's like, okay, I have 10 things I want to do, and I'm going to do it all by June 1st. Whoa.
Right. And I know that's why I was saying work backwards and then add them all in, because some things that you want to achieve by June 1st might only take a little bit of work on your part, but you got to do it. Some things might take daily work. Some things might take weekly work. So that's why when we are talking outcomes and goals, if you work backwards, then rather than being discouraged because you didn't achieve it that day, you can say, you know what? These 3 things I can do by June 1st. But the additional 3, I'm going to need till August. And then the remainder, it's really going to take me the year. However, to me, that would be more encouraging than not really thinking through how you're going to achieve them. And that's where people, they let themselves off the hook and they're not serious about what they want to achieve because they're not willing to really figure out how long it's going to take me to do these things. And then they'd be like, I tried, I didn't do it, but if you really want something, you got to put in the work to make it happen.
And that's also where being realistic comes into play.
Yes. I think it's realistic, but pushing yourself is okay. But just like it's a plan, right? It's a plan. You can, because if you don't have a plan to succeed, then basically you're going to fail or get lucky, right?
Yeah. How long does it take to break a habit? Have you heard about that?
Yes. So the it takes about 66 days is what the research says to break a habit. And sometimes that breaking the habit is part of forming a new one, right? So that's the average. The average is 66 days to form a new habit, which generally is getting rid of an old one, right? So it's it goes both ways, I think. And that's a realistic, and before seeing that, I thought it was 28 days. So that would be setting myself up to fail, right? Because I heard that somewhere, or I didn't really fully listen, but that's what I heard. I don't know what they said, but that's what I heard.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing, and I'm like, I've tried the 28-day thing, and it didn't work. So that totally makes sense to me.
And I think, and that's really what is said, backed by science, because, and now, that I know it's like, it is 66 days because 30, a lot of us have enough willpower, but like a real habit, it's got to be your daily, it's got to be something you're inspired to do, something you want to do, but you got to work to make it like that. And the 30 days is too easy to then maybe backslide. Like, oh, I did it for 30 days, boom. So, and it's interesting. It's not just 60 days, 66. So I'll have to write that on my calendar. I'm going to have to look to 66 days. And for me, I am always, and you can ask anybody who works with me, I have very unrealistic ideas of how long it takes to do things. I think everything can be done really quickly, and but I don't understand why you didn't do that 10-page report for me in 30 minutes. Like, I thought you would have been done by now. So I know that about myself very much so. So I would probably automatically have a very unrealistic time frame to create a new habit, and probably get discouraged with myself for not doing better and all that, just because I'm not thinking it through enough.
But that's also where a plan, like a what if this happens plan, comes into play.
Absolutely, because things come up to get you off track. You may travel, you might get sick, with when people are tackling nutrition and things like that, you go out, like there can be challenges, or you travel. And similarly with working out, sometimes travel and things come in the way. So if it's something you have to do every single day, be mindful that there may be days that it's not as easy. So you got to pivot and be willing to have some flexibility there, because our lives require that, I think, in order to stay sane.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, something can throw a monkey wrench in your plans on a daily basis. So I mean, you just never know what could happen. Absolutely,
it's true, and that is where with a lot of goals, and I just read this the other day about the importance of why, when you can get up early and check a couple things off the list that are important to you, there's just less opportunity for things to get in the way, or to distract you, or to come up. And it is true, I mean, that's there to provide yourself that time that hey, this is going to be uninterrupted.
I like that. Getting up early, the earlier you get up, the more you're able to do that day and check things off your list.
Yes.
That's
but
great.
That requires you got to go to bed early. See, it all comes together at some point.
Exactly. So that means that for people that are not morning people, just possibly, maybe 15 minutes early. That'll help.
It's all about the intention. And a harsh truth is if you can't keep promises to yourself, like how well do you keep promises to others? And that's kind of, I think that we are more apt to break promises to ourselves than to others, but what does that really say about us? So, and I don't want to go deep into that because like I do it all the time and I'm working on it with myself, but that's why writing it down, because now it's real and I'm looking at it and I've made a plan. So now I can hold myself to this.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to go deeper into that at a different time, Heather, or personally, because seriously, I have to agree on that. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we return, we're going to talk more about resolutions versus goals and the goal to get a divorce. Stay with us. Welcome back to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. All right, Heather, we've talked about resolutions versus goals. Goals are more successful. So the goal to get a divorce. And you said some people make this goal.
Well, and I think if you are initiating the divorce, I do think whether it's, articulated as this is my goal, but your goal is to get out of that relationship. Okay, well, how you have to do it is get divorced. So, and that, is important because that's about your own self-worth, your mental health, your physical health, which it absolutely, is affected when, emotionally and psychologically, you're not growing in a relationship, then you're dying and it wears on you. It just does. So yeah, it may be that that it's not working. And most women, and we've talked about it before, it's like 4 years minimum, they've probably thought about this when things just aren't working and they've tried everything and you kind of get to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm making a change. This new year, it's going to be different. And it won't be different right away, but ultimately, and I think that's the thing about goals and outcomes, like it doesn't change tomorrow, but a lot of things will change when in your mind, you've made that decision.
So really, when we think about this, the first step is to make the decision. And then the next step is to call Heather.
Exactly. One of our team members who will absolutely help you. But yeah, and, we're working on a lot of resources to help women work through this process. So always check back to the site and, on the show notes for links and different programs we're developing, because I've recognized that there is this period of time and you're trying to figure out, how do I work through this? And there's not a lot of resources out there for women because, a lot of the work is your own work that you have to do. And you can't always just get that done with a counselor. You've got to, that can be helpful. But, a lot of it is some self, reflection. And so I think that's where, when we talk about goals and outcomes, that's where and this may be for the first time in a long time, you're really thinking about, well, what do I want my life to look like? Like, that's a really good place to start.
Okay, so that would be the outcome. That would be the goal. What do I want my life to look like? That's where you start.
I think that's a great place to start because it helps and it'll help clarify. Is it really the marriage, or is it you, or is it your job, or is it, other things? Like there could be a lot of things going on that is making you feel like I need a change.
So that makes me think, what if it's not the marriage itself? I mean, you're going through this, this thought process, and that may be one of the things that comes up in your mind. But what if it's not the marriage itself?
Yeah. Well, and if this allows you to figure that out, you're better off, right? Sometimes, and I have heard this from women, and that's why I think it's important. Maybe they really had something physiologically going on because we all did, that was really affecting them negatively. And then they're like blaming this other person, but maybe there's something within you. And guess what? And maybe it is you, but then you fix it and you still don't want to be married. That's okay too. But I think if you really reflect on, hey, what is going on in my life and what can I control? And let's look at this, like, what is it that I want? Yeah. And I say that because I know that most women, and probably men, but certainly when they go through all of this process over these years, over this time, but if we can give you a little bit more focus on how to think this through, because most people like that's not, they don't, I want a divorce. Like, no, they just want some freedom. Maybe they want some peace in their life. They want a lot of things. That the divorce may be the vehicle to get them there, but it may not. So you ought to look at what is it overall that you want. And then we can, you can then work towards, like, okay, well, is the divorce what I want? So then let's figure out how to get that done. But maybe going through these other thoughts first, maybe I need a purpose. Maybe I need to get out and go get a job and do something. Maybe that's it, because kids are growing, you're not feeling as needed. You need to fulfill that part of yourself. There are so many things that I think if we look at, which is hard within ourselves, it's easier to blame somebody else, but then you're just going to go on to the next relationship and keep repeating the same thing over and over. So with the one common denominator, you. So start with you, and it'll give you clarity, I think, and really help with these goals of, and divorce, like I said, maybe one of them. And then, we can talk about what those look like, how you plan that out. But like we started before, starting with what's that outcome is really going to clarify how we get there.
But then, like you said, at the end of the day, if you have, that feeling that this just ain't it, then, well, there you go.
There you go. That we can help you with for sure. And then that's when you have to begin to think about, okay, well, what does my life look like? Am I going to need to get a job? What is our financial situation that I'm aware of, I'm unaware of? Am I going to have to pay support? Do we have kids? Like, what things are important to me to get the answers to? And even without knowing the answers, what is it that I want? And I do tell clients that a lot, because if it's not our job as attorneys to tell you what you want, you need to tell us. Now, then I think it's helpful because it's an honest conversation. Then we can say, well, that may or may not be supported by the law, but there may be opportunities, there may be things, but at least if you start with what your expectations are, you've been honest with yourself, which is really important. And then of course with your attorney, because if they don't know what your overall hope and goal is, again, how are we going to get you there? Right. Same with what we talked about at the very beginning. If you don't have that outcome, that goal for us to work backwards from, or we're not on the same page, can't get you there. So I think when you think about, what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? What do I want? The more you think, I don't think you can overthink it. I mean, maybe, but like not really. And really write it down and then work through that. It allows you, I would think, to have some clarity on what your future may look like.
Clarity. And also, this is, kind of a way to avoid letting others decide where you're going to be. Because, that reason why you're in the situation that you're in now, because you possibly let someone else decide this is what's good for you, but it wasn't.
Correct. Yeah. And and you were thinking, well, this might work out, this might not, but it sounds good. And I think that a lot of us do that when we're younger. But as you are, if you're really in this point where you're like, I think I want a divorce, it's time to really think those decisions through for yourself.
So this also makes me think you probably need to think about what matters to you the most.
Yes. And only you know that. Is it? And I think at the end of the day, we think many initial thoughts for a lot of people are definitely financial and things. But once you really begin to think that through, it's more about people, relationships, and how you preserve that, or how you're going to go through this process. And not that the possessions and the money and the assets aren't important, but there are a lot of things that are important. And so you want to think a little bit, in a lot of ways, a little more globally, and then work back, or on a bigger picture. Like, hey, some people, it could be really important to you. I want us to maintain a civil relationship through this process. Now, you only have control over yourself, but that's a big picture. I don't want to, drag my kids into this at all. And so again, you can only control your part, but maybe some bigger things. I don't want to include my extended family. I don't want to fight over little things. Then how you want to go into this. And then maybe when you're in it, you can reflect back. Because sometimes when you're in it, it can be hard not to, fight. I hate to use the word fight, but yes, argue, fight over things that are, in the grand scheme of things, rather insignificant, but they feel really, really significant and important in the moment. Like airline miles or something. And I'm just making stuff up, but but when you're in it, things seem really, really important. And I, of course, I've been doing this a long time. I understand a lot of those emotions and feelings. And so, then that's a good time to be like, well, what were your overall goals at the beginning?
Now, Heather, you said airline miles. That's one of those frequently asked questions that we did not get to. That was one of my favorite shows, I tell you. Yeah. So we're going to have to get to that at some point.
That's right. That's a to be continued. Keep everybody hanging on, right?
I'm telling you, that was one of my favorite shows. If you missed it, you have to go back and listen. You really do. You can go to our website, womenwinningdivorce.com, to download, subscribe, and listen. One of my favorite shows.
That was a good one.
Right. Yeah, it really was. So it also sounds like to me you're saying think long term. Sure, things and money. I mean, that's part of your long term, being able to take care of yourself. But when you said people as well, that's important.
Well, it is. And when you're entering this process of divorce, that is a challenge to think long term. It might be really hard to imagine yourself 10 years from now, or scary, just too overwhelming. Start with 1 year, 3 years, just start a little bit further on, kind of like with the goals, like we were talking about. Let's baby steps on that, because once you enter the divorce process, it can be consuming, and it really does affect people in so many ways. So that's where I think it's really, give yourself some grace. Don't think I have got to, be XYZ in 5 years. And if everything doesn't go according to plan and this way, it won't happen. Or overwhelmed, I can't even imagine it. So I won't even look 1 year in the future or 2. So that's where sometimes breaking that down a little bit can give you a light at the end of the tunnel, and think, oh yeah, okay, I can envision that. And that feels like that's really where I want to go.
Heather, any parting words?
Well, of course, I always do. And if you are listening to this and you are really thinking, hey, this year is going to be the year, I know a bigger life is waiting for you. You're going to have to make some decisions that you haven't made before, but it's just one step at a time. And a goal throughout this process is you can decide if you're going to be a victim or not. We've talked about that a lot, and how you're going to go through this and how you are going to conduct yourself and view yourself through this process. And I know we can help you through that. We do it every day at Florida Women's Law Group, and if you are ready to take this step or know somebody who is, please reach out, because the team is here to support you.
Heather, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Julie. I do think you're our biggest fan.
Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.
Get fast, reliable speeds at home and on the go with internet and mobile from Xfinity. Switch to Xfinity Internet with unlimited data included, so you can do more of what you love online. They have deals with a 2-year rate guarantee and no annual contract required, so it's risk-free. Plus, when you add Xfinity Mobile, you'll get connected to the fastest mobile service, and you'll get major savings. Go to Xfinity.com/faster, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store to learn more. Restrictions apply. Xfinity Mobile requires